Hello there.
General Kenobi.
As you can probably tell already, we're doing something a little bit different today, because it seems with you lot that one of your favourite pastimes in the comments sections is calling me out for incorrect pronunciation of driver names, corners, circuits, etc. I do tend to try and make a sincere effort to pronounce things correctly wherever possible, but I thought today I would try and reclaim that criticism, so to speak, and I'm going to go through all 800 and something Formula 1 drivers and see if I can correctly pronounce all of their names. Now, most of them for English speakers, they get anglicised, and so I'm going to try and do it in a native way where I can. Where I am helped in this is that approximately 40% probably of all Formula 1 drivers come from English-speaking countries. Also, I do speak German at probably the level of a 10-year-old. Wirklich, was machen wir hier? Rennen fahren oder Ping-Pong? And I also speak Dutch at probably the level of a 5-year-old. Ik heb een vraag. Ik zie geen bitse pers. Moesten zij naar het vliegveld rennen? Of wissen zij niet waar de persconferentie was? But yeah, should be a bit of fun, but I apologise in advance for giving all of my non-Anglophone listeners ear cancer. But actually, one thing you can do before we get going to help me out is to click that subscribe button, because somewhere about 80% of you aren't subscribed, and growth has been not brilliant over the past 6 months, and I'm hoping to get that going again and get into a proper rhythm going into 2025. And if you like looking at my mug, well, you can see a lot more of it on the DRS Train podcast, which I run with Kyron Smith, Nav F1 and Nedzo's F1 Gridbox, where we cover race reviews and any historical F1 topics of our choice. But yeah, let's get going. Right, so in front of me here, we have the Wikipedia list of every Formula 1 driver ever, so there's over 800 of them. A lot of these I can rattle off pretty quickly because, you know, they're English countries and all of that. With the others, the Italians are going to be interesting in the Spanish because I am largely incapable of rolling my R's. So when I go r, it's often, okay, that was actually quite good. But when I normally do that, it often comes out more like a ch. So that'll be interesting. French, God knows. I mean, half the letters don't even sound, but let's see how this goes. So, Carlo Abate, George Abacassis, Kenny Aitchison, Andrea de Adamich. I looked this one up actually because I wondered if it was de Adamich, because there is the South Tyrol region in Italy where they speak German, and it looked like that, but then I realised actually his family is originally from Croatia, so it's actually Adamich, it's just a respelling of the Croatian. Philippe Adam, if that's French, then rather than just Philippe Adams, Adam, probably. Walt Ada, Kurt Adolf, Fred Agabashian, Kurt Ahrens Jr. Actually, it's German, so Kurt Ahrens Jr., probably. Jack Aitken, Christian Albers. I remember seeing his name for the first time when I first played F1 Championship Edition and thinking Christian. Wasn't sure what was going on there at the time. Alexander Albon, Michele Alboreto, Jean Alesi. Okay, so with this one, most people just say something like Jaime. I've heard Alguersuari. Jonathan Ledyard used to say Alguersuari. Martin Brundle said Alguersuari. I usually say Alguersuari, but my first thought was something like this would be something like Jaime Alguersuari, something along those lines. I don't really know. Philippe Alliot, Cliff Allison, Fernando Alonso. That sounded Italian. Giovanna Amati, George Amick, Red Amick, Chris Amon, Bob Anderson. This is Swedish, so probably something like Conny Andersson. Emil Andres. Yeah, that one, I'm thinking Andres. The Americans would just say Andres. Something like, yeah, Emil Andres, I guess I'd say. This one's interesting because Andretti was born actually in what is now Croatia, but at the time was part of Italy to an Italian family, so he's Italian-American squared. So as a child, it would have been something probably like Mario Andretti, but now that he's in America, it's going to be Mario Andretti, something like that. And then his son, Michael Andretti, Keith Andrews, Elio De Angelis, Marco Apicella. Ooh, Portuguese, yeah. Mario de Araújo Cabral? Something like that. Mario de Araújo Cabral, I think. Frank Army, Chuck Arnold, René Arnoux, Peter Arundel, Alberto Ascari, Peter Ashdown, Ian Ashley, Jerry Ashmore, Bill Aston, Richard Atwood, Manny Ayulo, Luca Badoa. So, I kind of switched this. Some people say Badoa and some people say Badoa, but I think it's probably Badoa is how it's stressed. Giancarlo Baghetti. He was the last driver to win his debut. He did so in 1961 at Reims-Gueux, which I used to think was Reims-Goya, but it's actually, or Reims-Goya, but yeah, Reims-Gueux is apparently how you're supposed to say that circuit, which I learned quite recently. Julian Bailey, Mauro Baldi, Bobby Ball, Marcel Bolsach. It doesn't look like the most French name in the world. Yeah, Marcel Bolsach, I think. Lorenzo Bandini, Henry Banks, Fabrizio Barbazza, John Barber, Skip Barber, Paolo Barilla. So again, with Rubinho, some people say Barrichello, some people say Barrichello. I'm guessing how he would say it would be something like Rubens Barrichello, something like that. Michael Bartels. So yeah, Michael in German it's not Michael, it's Michael. It's Michael, roughly. So Michael Bartels, Edgar Bart, Giorgio Bassi, Erwin Bauer, Schult Baumgartner. So his surname, his one half of his family is Austrian, but he's from Hungary, so Schult and then just Baumgartner. Eli Biol. It must be Eli Biol, not Eli Biol. Yeah, Eli Biol, Oliver Behrman, Don Bowman, Carl Gunther Beckham, Jean Beyer, Derek Bell, Stefan Beloff, Paul Belmondo, Tom Belseux. Yeah, I'm assuming the O with the strike is a lengthening because there's Danish has a lot of kind of sounds in it, so something. Yeah, Tom Belseux, I think. Jean-Pierre Beltoise. I used to say Beltoire, but apparently it's Beltoise. Olivier Beretta. Again, very Italian name, but Monaco close enough to the border. Alan Berg. Georges Berger. Assuming that's not a German surname. Georges Berger, I guess. And then Gerhard Berger. Eric Bernard, Enrique Bernaldi. I mean, that is a very Italian name for a Brazilian, but they probably Enrique Bernaldi. They sound more like to them, but Enrique Bernaldi, I'll just say. He's a steward now, an FIA steward. Enrico Bertaggia, Tony Bettenhausen, Mike Butler. I remember this one from my geography video. So it's Pirapongs Parobe Panoban. Is his full name. Everyone just called him Prince Bira of Siam. Yeah, his father was a Siamese prince called Wongwade, and then his first cousin when he was born was the reigning king of Siam, Wajirawul. I believe it was his grandfather, actually, was the king from the play or musical The King and I. So, yeah. There's even been royalty in Formula One. Jules Bianchi. Again, that's an Italian surname that dear Jules had. But yeah, I think Jules Bianchi. Lucien Bianchi, who was his great uncle. Gino Bianco. Again, very Italian name. He may have actually been born in Italy now that I think about it, but moved to Brazil later. But yeah, Gino Bianco. Hans Binder. Clemente Biondetti. Pablo Berger, I think. Art Bish, Harry Blanchard, Michael Blakemola. So yeah, in Dutch with the verb endings, you take the N off, so it's silent, and I'm assuming that's the case with surnames, in which case this would be Blakemola instead of Blakemolen. Alex Blignot, I'm assuming that's French, even though he's from South Africa. Trevor Blockdyke, Mark Blundell, Raoul Bosel, Minato Boffa, Bob Bondurant, Felice Bonetto, Joe Bonnier. So, Joe Bonnier, he came from a quite wealthy family which originally came from Germany, but Bonnier sounds neither Swedish nor German. So I'm just going to say, Joe Bonnier. I used to say Bonnier, but I think Bonnier is probably... In Swedish, it'd be like Joe Bonnier or something like that. Roberto Bonomi, Juan Manuel Bordeaux, Slim Borgud, sponsored by ABBA, would you believe? Lucky Bota, South Africa, if he's an Afrikaner, Bota rather than Botha. Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, if typewriters could talk, they would speak Finnish. Jean-Christophe Bouillon, Sébastien Bourdais. I've always said Thierry Boutsen, but apparently it's not Boutsen, it might be Boutsen or Boutser. In my mind, I'm not sure what sounds more correct, but I would just say something like Thierry Boutser, let's say. Johnny Boyd, David Brabham, Gary Brabham, Jack Brabham, Bill Brack, Ernesto Brambilla, Vittorio Brambilla, Tony Branca, Gianfranco Brancatelli, Eric Brandon, Don Branson, Tom Bridger, Tony Bryce, Chris Bristow, Peter Broker, Tony Brooks, Alan Brown, Walt Brown, Warwick Brown, Adolphe Rudes, Martin Brundle, Jean-Maria Bruni, Jimmy Bryan, Clemar Bucci, I think, Ronnie Bucknam, Ivor Bueb, Sebastian Buemi, Luis Bueno. I'm assuming that's Luis and not Louis. But again, Bueno sounds very Italian. Probably Luis Bueno in Brazil. Ian Burgess, Luciano Berti. Again, very Italian name for a Brazilian. There must be a lot of Italians there. Roberto Businello, Jensen Button, Tommy Byrne, Giulio Cabianca, Phil Cade, Alex Caffey, John Campbell-Jones, Adrian Campos. I'm assuming it's Adrian and not Adrian because there's that little accent there. So Adrian Campos, John Cannon, Eitel Cantoni, Bill Cantrell. Actually, no, this is American. Bill Cantrell is Bill Cantrell, not Cantrell. Ivan Capelli, Piero Carini, Dwayne Carter, Eugenio Castellotti. Okay, this one threw me a little bit because some people say Johnny Cicotto because it turns out he's actually an Italian surname even though he's from Venezuela. But in Venezuela it would be Cicotto. So Johnny Cicotto, Andrea de Cesaris, François Sever, Eugene Chabot, Jay Chamberlain, Kurun Chantok. That sounded Scottish. Alain de Chagny? Alain de Chagny, I think. Colin Chapman. Yes, he was an F1 driver. He only entered one race, I think, before he founded Lotus. But yeah, he gave it a go once in the 50s. Dave Charlton. Pedro Chavez. Bill Cheeseborg. Eddie Cheever. Andrea Chiesa. I used to say Chiesa, but I was told it's actually Chiesa. Max Chilton. Ettore Scimeri. Again, he moved to Venezuela from Italy, so Italian name. So yeah, Ettore Scimeri. Louis Chiron. I'm assuming that's just Joey Chitwood. That's a quite inventive spelling of it. Bob Christie. Johnny Clace. David Clapham. Jim Clark. Kevin Cogan. Franco Colapinto. He's Colapinto. He's of Italian extraction. Argentina does have some quite inventive pronunciations, even of Spanish names and words. But yeah, I'll just say Franco Colapinto. Peter Collins. Bernard Colomb. Alberto Colombo. Eric Comas. I'm told it's not Comar, but yeah. Eric Comas. Franco Comotti. George Connor. George Constantine. John Cords. David Coulthard. I used to say Coulthard for years, and some people, but yeah, I'm pretty certain it is actually Coulthard. How you say his name? David Coulthard. Piers Courage. Chris Craft. Jim Crawford. Ray Crawford. Alberto Crespo. Antonio Kreutz? Antonio Kreutz, I think. Or Kreutz. I'll say Antonio Kreutz. Larry Crockett. Tony Crook. Art Cross. Jeffrey Crossley. Jerome D'Ambrosio. Old Custard. Chuck Day. Yannick Dalmas. Derek Daly. Christian Danner. Jorge De Ponte. Anthony Davidson. Jimmy Davis. Colin Davis. Jimmy Daywalt. Jean-Denis Delatraz. Unless it's Jean-Denis Delatraz. Jean-Denis Delatraz sounds most realistic. Patrick Depailler. Pedro Deniz. Duke Dinsmore. Frank Docknall. Jose Dolem. So that again is a Spanish first name, French last name. Interesting fact about Jose Dolem is that he actually is the first cousin and half brother of Didier Pironi, because they had the same father, but they're different mothers, but their mothers were sisters. So yeah, cousins and brothers. Martin Donnelly. Mark Donoghue. Robert Dornbos.
Vibrating robot vagina!
Ken Downing. Bob Drake. Paddy Driver. Piero Drogo. Bernard de Dreifer. That'll be a Flemish name, so Bernard de Dreifer. Johnny Dumfries. I believe his full title was actually John Crichton Stewart, 7th or 8th Marquess of Bute, something like that. So yeah, pretty rich guy. Only did one or 2 years in Formula One. Len Duncan. Piero Duccio. George Eaton. Bernie Eccleston. Yes, he was a Formula One driver. He entered the Monaco Grand Prix in 1958, didn't qualify, and he also said that he dismissed it and just said it wasn't a serious effort anyway. Don Edmonds. Guy Edwards. Vic Helford. Ed Elysian. Paul Emery. Tomasz Enger. I'm guessing that the S with the little hat is a sh. Paul England. Marcus Eriksson. Harold Ertl. Nassif Estefano. Philippe Etonseli? Etonseli, not Etonceline. Yeah, Philippe Etonseli, I'm guessing. Bob Evans. Corrado Fabi. Theo Fabi. Pascal Fabre. Carlo Fassetti. Luigi Fagioli. Jack Fairman. Okay, this one's interesting. So Fangio, most people say Fangio, and that is an Italian name, but Argentine pronunciation, again, as I said, is a bit strange. So instead of Fangio, it's more like Fangio, something like that in Argentine Spanish, I believe. So yeah, so like Juan Manuel Fangio, which sounds almost like Van Gogh. But yeah, if I started saying that everyone in videos instead of Fangio, everyone would think I'd gone mad, probably. But yeah, Juan Manuel Fangio. Roughly. Nino Farina. Walt Faulkner. William Ferguson. Maria Teresa de Filippis, Formula One's first female driver. Ralph Furman. Ludwig Fischer. Rudi Fischer. Mike Fischer. Giancarlo Fisichella. John Fitch. Now we get to the Fittipaldis. Again, this is a family of mostly Italian origin. But, so just Christian Fittipaldi, Emerson Fittipaldi, Pietro Fittipaldi, and Wilson Fittipaldi. Theo Fitzal, Pat Flaherty, Jan Flinterman, Ron Flockhart, Miran Four? That sounds almost Israeli, I'm not sure. Miran Four, I think. Miran Four, probably. Gregor Wojtek, George Fulmer, George Fonda, Norberto Fontana. Oh, goodness. Asdrubal Fontes Bayardo. It's quite a mouthful. Carl Forberg, Gene Force, Franco Ferrini, Philip Fotheringham Parker, AJ Foyt, who I believe is the last surviving Formula One driver that raced in the Indy 500 from 1950 to 1960, because Paul Goldsmith died in September, and he was also the oldest living driver at the time. But now AJ Foyt is the last of those kind of anomalies in the Formula One record of the drivers that only did the Indy 500, although I think he did enter a couple of Grand Prix as well. Giorgio Franca, Don Freeland, Heinz Harald Frentzen, Paul Frere, Patrick Friesacher, Joe Fry. Our first Japanese driver, Hiroshi Fushida, Beppe Gabbiani, Bertrand Gachot, Patrick Gaillard? I think Gaillard. Davina Galica. So this, Galica, another female driver, her father was Polish, so that's Galica rather than like Galica or Galica, because the C in Polish is like a ts sound, like a ts. So Davina Galica. Nanni Galli. Oscar Alfredo Galvez. Fred Gamble. Houn Ganley. Guido van der Garde. So most people just say, understandably, Guido van der Garde. But yeah, because it's Dutch, it's Guido van der Garde. Frank Gardner. Billy Garrett. Joe Gardner. That being said, because it's Austrian, I do wonder if it's actually meant to be Jo instead of Joe, but Joe sounds more natural, although it could, yeah, if it's short for someone like Joachim, then maybe Jo Gardner would be how you'd say it. Pierre Gasly, Tony Gaze, Gecki. That's a pseudonym. I don't know his full name, but I think just Gecki, unless it's Jecki. One of the two. Olivier Gedebian, Marc Genet, Elmer George, Bob Gerard. That must be, yeah, I was about to say Gerard, but yeah, Gerard. Bob Gerard. Either Gerino Gerini or Garino Guerini. I think Gerino Gerini, that sounds more realistic. Peter Gethin, Piercarlo Ginzani, Bruno Giacomelli, Dick Gibson, G-Max, again another pseudonym, Richie Ginther, Antonio Giovinazzi, Yves Giraud Carbantu, Yves Giraud Carbantu, Yves Giraud Carbantu, Ignazio Giunti, Timo Glock, Tim Bell in English, Helm Glöckler, Paco it's either going to be Godia or Godia. Paco Godia, we'll say. Carol Godin de Beaufort, Christian Gotels, if we think that that's Flemish, although I believe they don't actually do the ch, so Christian Gotels. Paul Goldsmith, who I aforementioned died recently. Jose Frolan Gonzalez, Oscar Gonzalez, Aldo Gordini, again Italian family but French, his father founded the Gordini Company. Horace Gould, Jean-Marc Gounon, Emmanuel de Grafenried. The surname sounds German, like Grafenried, but then Emmanuel de Grafenried, if it's Italian. I'll say Emmanuel de Grafenried. Lucas de Grassi, Cecil Green, Keith Green, Maston Gregory, Cliff Griffith, Georges Grignard, Bobby Grimm. So, for the legendary Grosjean, a lot of people just say Romain Grosjean, which is close enough. It should really be Romain Grosjean. I think I've said some people say Grouse Jean. That was the most inventive pronunciation I've ever heard of that. But yeah, Romain Grosjean, Olivier Griard, Brian Gubby, André Guelfi. He was born in Morocco, actually, but raced for France. Miguel Angel Guerra, Roberto Guerrero. This one, I think I've always said it as Maurizio Gugelmin, Some people say Googleman, which doesn't sound right to me, but yeah, I think it's Maurizio Gugelmin. Dan Gurney, Esteban Gutierrez, Hubert Hain, Mike Halewood, Mika Hakkinen, Bruce Halford, Jim Hall, Duncan Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton, David Hampshire, Sam Hanks, Walt Hansgen, Mike Harris. It lists him as South Africa, but the thing is, the races that he did do, he actually was born in what is now Zambia. At the time, it was Northern Rhodesia. And then he raced under that flag. And he also raced under the flag of the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, which was a very short-lived union between Rhodesia and Nyasaland, which is now Malawi. But yeah, he also listed himself as a South African, even though I don't think he ever actually lived in South Africa. Kuth Harrison, Brian Hart, founder of the Hart engines that did not perform particularly well in the 80s and 90s. Brendan Hartley, Gene Hartley, Rio Haryanto, again, not that I really know what an Indonesian name sounds like. It doesn't sound very Indonesian to me, but yeah, maybe just Rio Haryanto, I think, is how it's how everyone says it, so that's probably what it is. Masahiro Hasemi, Naoki Hattori, can't do a Japanese accent. Paul Hawkins, Mike Hawthorne, Boy Haya, this is an interesting one for Dutch name, Haya, something of that nature. Willy Hakes, Nick Heidfeld, Theo Helfrich, Mac Hellings, Brian Henton, Johnny Herbert, everyone's favourite race steward, Al Herman, Hans Herman, he's in his 90s now, I think, and he's still going strong. François Henno, François Henno. It almost sounds like Renault, but with an H, like François Henno. François Henno. Hans Heyer, the only man to fail to qualify, fail to finish, and get disqualified from the same race all at once. That one is a funny one. He failed to qualify for the German Grand Prix, but then because someone else didn't start it, or there was a big crash at the start, and he decided to just slip out of the pit lane before anyone noticed and join the race anyway, because he thought, well, I may not ever get another chance to race in Formula 1. Then the car died a few laps in, and then suddenly the race stewards were like, oh, he's not meant to be here, so let's disqualify him, even though the car's already out. So yeah, a fail to qualify, a fail to finish, and a disqualification all in the same race. Damon Hill, Graham Hill, Phil Hill, Peter Hurt, David Hobbs, Gary Hocking, Ingo Hoffman. Again, Brazilian, Ingo Hoffman. Bill Holland, Jackie Holmes, Bill Homeyer, Kazuyoshi Hoshino, Jerry Hoyt, Nico Hülkenberg. We all say Hulkenberg. Ricardo goes Hülkenberg. Nico Hülkenberg. Denny Holm, James Hunt, Jim Hurtubise? How would an American say that? Jim Hurtubise? Jim Hurtubise. Let's go with that. Gus Hutchison, Jackie Ix, Yuji Ide, Jesus Iglesias, Taki Inoue. Most people say Inoue, I'm pretty certain it is actually Inoue. Innes Ireland, Eddie Irvine, Chris Irwin, Jean-Pierre Jabouille. For ages I used to say Jabouille, but yeah, it's meant to be Jabouille. Jimmy Jackson, Joe James, John James, Jean-Pierre Jarrier, Max Jean, Stefan Johansson, Eddie Johnson, Leslie Johnson, Bruce Johnstone, Alan Jones, Tom Jones, not that Tom Jones, Juan Jover, Oswald Kach, Narain Kartikeyan, Ukyo Katayama, Ken Kavanagh, Rupert Keegan. He died only a few weeks ago. I believe he's the most recent Formula 1 driver to die, actually, Rupert Keegan. Eddie Eddie Kiezen sounds more correct. I think that's Afrikaans. Al Keller, Joe Kelly, David Kennedy, Loris Kessel. If that's French, Loris Kessel. Or just Loris Kessel, if it's the German part. Gruus Kessler. Nicholas Kieser, I think for Danish. Leo Kinonen. Danny Cladis. Hans Klenk. Peter de Klerk. Christian Klien. Karl Kling. Ernst Klodwig. Kamui Kobayashi. Helmut Koenig. Heikki Kovalainen. This one, so that's obviously not a Finnish name, but I think his father was Russian. Mikko Kazarowicki. Willi Krakow. Rudolf Krause. Robert Kubica. Some people say Kubica, but again, as I mentioned before, Divina Galica, the C is at S, so Robert Kubica. Kurt Kunker. Masao Kushima. I had to look this one up because people do it differently. I believe it's basically Daniel Kvyat. Is not like Kvyat, but yeah, Kvyat is how he's meant to say it in Russian. Robert Lacaze. So he was not born in Morocco, but I think he moved there as an adult and just decided to race for Morocco. For one race, actually, the Moroccan Grand Prix in 1958. Jacques Lafitte. Franck Lagos. Jan Lammers. Pedro Lamy. Chico Landi. Herman Lang. Claudio Langes. Claudio Langes. Nicola Larini. Right, can't roll my R's at all, so Oscar Larauri. Roughly. Gerard Larousse. Jod Larson. Nicholas Latifi. Niki Lauda. Roger Laurent. Giovanni Lavaggi. Chris Lawrence. Liam Lawson. So this has two versions, because the anglicised version is just Charles Leclerc, but the French version is, Charles Leclerc. I prefer to say Charles Leclerc. Michel Leclerc. Neville Lederle? Neville Lederle, I think. Jeff Lees. Gijs van Lennep. It's not Geese or Gids or Guys, it's Gijs van Lennep. Arthur Lagar. Okay, so people just say, for obvious reasons, they just say JJ Leto, but his full name is something along the lines of Jyrki Järvi Leto, roughly. But I think Keke Rosberg told him, just shorten it to JJ because nobody's going to be able to say that. Lamberto Leoni. Les Leston. Pierre Levesque, famously the victim of the 1955 Le Mans disaster. Baylis Leverett. Jackie Lewis. Stuart Lewis Evans. Guy Ligier, the founder of Ligier. Andy Linden. Roberto Lippi. Vitantonio Liuzzi. Dries van der Loof. Lella Lombardi, the only woman as of yet to have scored championship points, although admittedly it was half a point. Ricardo Londonio. He was actually killed by cartel members in Colombia. Ernst Loaf. So Andre Lotterer, people say Andre Lotterer, like Andre Lotterer, which ends up sounding more French than German, but yeah, Andre Lotterer. Henri Levaux. John Love. Pete Lovely. Roger Loyer. Jean Lucas. Jean-Lucien Bonnet. Okay, so that's Swedish, so something like Erik Lundgren. Brett. I say Brett Lunger, which sounds very West Country. I'm assuming it's Lunger and not Lunger. I think an American say Brett Lunger. So I've always said Lunger, but I don't know. It could be Lunger, but that's a very strange surname to have. So Brett Lunger. Mike McDowell. Herbert McKay Fraser. Bill Mackey. Lance Macklin. Damien McGee. Tony Maggs. Mike McGill. Umberto Maglioli. Jan Magnussen. Kevin Magnussen. Guy Mares. And then Willy. Is it a W or a V? Willy Mares? I think. Willy Mares. I'm not sure if they're actually related because they're different countries, but they're similar time. Maybe they are, I don't know. Pastor Maldonado. Nigel Menzel. Sergio Mantovani. Johnny Mantz. Robert Manzon. Onofre Marimon. Helmut Marko. And yeah, he was a Formula 1 driver. He got twatted in the face by a stone, which left him blind in one eye. And I think he won Le Mans one year, actually, as well. So, yeah, he was a pretty decent driver before he decided to give that up so that he could start tormenting other drivers. Tarso Marquez. Leslie Marr. Tony Marsh. Eugene Martin. Pierluigi Martini. Jochen Mass. Felipe Massa. Cristiano D'Amata. Michael May, Timmy Meyer, Nikita Mazepin, representing the Royal Air Force, Francois Mazet, Gaston Mazzacane, Kenneth McAlpine. He is the oldest driver in history. He died a couple of years ago at the age of 102, 101, one of only 2 or 3 centenarians in Formula 1 as well. Perry McCarthy, the very first Stig, Ernie McCoy, Johnny McDowell, Jack McGrath, Brian Maguire, Bruce McLaren, Alan McNish, Graham McRae, Jim McWithy, Carlos Menditegui, I haven't got a clue how to say that. Carlos Menditegui, Roberto Meri, Harry Merkel, Arturo Mazzario, Roberto Mieres, François Migaud, John Miles, André Milou, Chet Miller, Gerhard Mitter, Stefano Modena, Thomas Monarch. He's the only driver that doesn't have his own Wikipedia article because basically he was actually entered for the Mexican Grand Prix, I think in 1963, without even knowing it. He suddenly appeared on the entry list and he wasn't in Mexico, and he was like, wait, what the hell? And then just pulled out, and yeah, that was that. Franck Montagny, Tiago Montero, Andrea Montemini, Peter Monteverdi, Robin Montgomery Charrington. That has to be the most English name I've ever heard in my life. Juan Pablo Montoya, Gianni Morbidelli, Roberto Moreno, again, very Italian name for a Brazilian. Dave Morgan, Silvio Moser. Again, Swiss. So, Silvio Moser, unless it's Silvio Moser. Silvio Moser, I think. Bill Moss, Sterling Moss, Gino Munaron, David Murray, Luigi Musso, Kazuki Nakajima, Satoru Nakajima, Shinji Nakano, Duke Naylan, Alessandro Nannini, Emanuele Nespetti, Felipe Nazar. He's actually from a Lebanese family, hence Nazar. Massimo Natili, Brian Naylor, Mike Nazaruk, Tiff Needell. I've been in the same room as him. I didn't speak to him, but I got to be in the same room as him once, so that's the closest I've got to meeting an ex-Formula 1 driver. My first instinct is Jack Nellerman, but because it's Danish, I'm thinking Jack Nellerman. Patrick Nev, John Nicholson, Cal Naday, Helmut Niedermeyer, Brausch Niemann. That sounded very German, but Brausch Niemann, if he's Afrikaner. Gunnar Nilsson, Hideki Noda, Lando Norris, Rodney Nucky, Robert O'Brien, Esteban Ocon, Pat O'Connor, Casimiro de Oliveira, Jackie Oliver. Okay, so I used to say before Danny Ongais, but I'm told apparently it's actually Danny Ongais. It's he's from Hawaii, or he was from Hawaii. Only Hawaiian Formula 1 driver, but I'm pretty certain it's Danny Ongais, and his nickname in IndyCar was On Gas. Ricky von Opel. So he was born in New York City to a German father and a Colombian mother, but then he decided to race for Liechtenstein, even though he'd never lived there. But then he also said that if he ever won a race, he wanted the German national anthem played on the podium. Karl Oppitzhauser, Fritz de Ode, Arthur Owen, Okay, so with this one, in one of my more recent videos, I called him José Carlos Paz. I actually went and looked up interviews with him from Brazilian television in the 1970s, and they all said Paz, but then the IPA says Pache, and a lot of people told me it's Pache, so I guess it is. So, José Carlos Pache. Nello Pagani, Riccardo Paletti, Torsten Palm, Jolyon Palmer, Jonathan Palmer. A lot of people say Panis. When I looked this up, it's actually Panis. So Olivier Panis, Giorgio Pantano, Massimiliano Papis. I think there's a reason everyone just called him Max Papis. Mike Parks, Reg Parnell, Tim Parnell, Johnny Parsons, Riccardo Patrese. A lot of people say Patrese, including myself normally, but I think it does say Patrese is more like what it actually is. Al Pease, Roger Penske, Cesare Perdisa, Sergio Perez, Louis Perez Sala, Larry Perkins, Henri Pescarolo, Alessandro Pezzente Rossi, Josef Peters, Ronnie Peterson, Vitaly Petrov, Alfredo Pian, Oscar Piastri, Charles Pic, François Picard, Ernie Peterson, Paul Peach, André Pillet, Teddy Pillet, Luigi Piotti, David Piper, Nelson Piquet, Nelson Piquet Jr., Renato Pirocci, Didier Pironi, again Italian surname but he's French, so Didier Pironi, Emanuele Pirot, Antonio Pizzonia, Eric van der Pola. A lot of people say Van der Pol, but it's actually Eric van der Pola. Jacques Paulet, Ben Pon, Dennis Poor, Alfonso de Portago, Sam Posey, Charles Pozzi, Jackie Pretorius, Ernesto Prinoth, or Prinot, Ernesto Prinot, David Profit, Alan Prost, Tom Price, Dave Purley, Clive Pusey, Dieter Kester, Ian Raby, Bobby Rahal. I got told off for calling him Rahal, but apparently in the Americans say Bobby Rahal, as I'm supposed to say it. Kimi Raikkonen, Hermano da Silva Ramos, who is now the oldest living Formula One driver. He turns 100 next year. Pierre-Henri Raffanel, Dick Rathman, Jim Rathman, Roland Ratzenberger. I say Hector Rebeke, but at first glance it looks like Rebak, which I also said, but I think Rebeke is how you're supposed to say that one. Brian Redman, Jimmy Reese, Ray Reid, Alan Reese, Clay Regazzoni, Paul DeResta, Carlos Reutemann. Anglicised, you would say Lance Reventlow, but I know that his father was actually a Danish aristocrat, so it's probably Lance Reventlov. But yeah, Lance Reventlow, or Lance Reventlow in America. Peter Revson, John Rhodes, Alex Ribeiro, Daniel Ricciardo, Ken Richardson, Fritz Ries, Jim Rigsby, Jochen Rindt, John Risley Pritchard, Giovanni De Rio. That's one where you really need to be able to roll your R's. Richard Robarts, Pedro Rodriguez, Ricardo Rodriguez, Alberto Rodriguez Lareta, Franco Roll, Alan Rollinson, Tony Rolt, Bertel Roos, Pedro de la Rosa, Keke Rosberg. We have our favourite press conference question to help us with this one. Nico Rosberg.
Nico Rosberg?
Not just Nico Rosberg. Maury Rose, Louis Rosière, Ricardo Tosser, Alexander Rossi, Hube Rotengatter, Basil van Rooyen, Lloyd Ruby, Jean-Claude Rudard, or Rudaz. I'll say Rudard. Jean-Claude Rudard, George Russell, Eddie Russo, Paul Russo, Troy Ruttman, Peter Ryan, Eddie Sachs, Bob Said, unless it's Said. I think said. Carlos Sainz. Eliseo Salazar. Mika Salo. Roy Salvadori. Consalvo Senesi. Stefan Sarrazin. Sarrazin. Stefan Sarrazin. Logan Sargent. Takuma Sato. Carl Scarborough. Ludovico Scarfiotti. Giorgio Scarlatti. Ian Schechter. Jody Schechter. Harry Schell. Tim Schenken. Albert Scherer. Domenico Schiattarella. It looks like it should say Schiattarella, but that doesn't sound very Italian. But then Schiattarella, it's also going to say Scattarella, like Cinderella's BDSM-loving sister. Anyway, Heinz Schiller, Bill Schindler, Jean-Louis Schlesser, Joe Schlesser, Bernd Schneider, Rudolf Schuller, Rob Schroeder, Michael Schumacher, Mick Schumacher, Rolf Schumacher, Vern Chupin, Adolfo Schwelm-Kreutz, Bob Scott, Archie Scott Brown, Piero Scotti, Wolfgang Ziedel, Gunther Seifert. Okay, so with Senna, most British people say Ayrton Senna. I say Ayrton Senna. I believe in Brazilian it's basically Ayrton Senna. And then Bruno Senna, Dorino Serafini, Chico Serra, Doug Serurier, Doug Serurier, Johnny Servoz-Gavin, Tony September, Hap Sharp, Brian Shaw Taylor, Carol Shelby, Tony Shelley. Now, up until very recently, I used to always say Joe Siffert, obviously ignoring that he's Swiss, so it's actually Joe Siffert, not Joe Siffert. André Simon, Sergei Sirotkin, Rob Slotemacher, Moises Solana, or Moises Solana, I think. Alex Soler-Roig, Raymond Sommer, Vincenzo Sospiri, Stephen South. Okay, so this one is actually a pseudonym. So Mike Sparkin, as it says, his real name was actually, it was Michel or Michal Poberievsky. So had a Slavic surname, but yeah, called himself Mike Sparkin for some reason. Scott Speed, Mike Spence, Alan Stacey, Gaetano Staraba, Will Stevens, Chuck Stevenson, Ian Stewart, Jackie Stewart, Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy is Jackie's older brother, actually, but Ian Stewart is unrelated to those two. Siegfried Storr. So, despite the Italian flag, he's from South Tyrol, so he is Italian, but he comes from the German-speaking part of Italy, hence the name. Rolf Stommelen, Philippe Streif, Lance Stroll / Strulovich, Hans Stuck, Hans Joachim Stuck, Otto Stupacher, Danny Sullivan. Mark Seurer speaks German because he does German commentary for Formula One, or at least used to. I don't know if he still does. So Mark Seurer, but then that sounds French. Mark Seurer. John Surtees, Andy Sutcliffe, Adrian Sutil. In German, it's going to be more like Adrian Sutil, or Adrian Sutil, something more like that in German. Len Sutton, Aguri Suzuki, Toshio Suzuki, Jacques Swater. I before have always said Jacques Swaiters, but as that's more than likely French, Jacques Swater. Bob Zwikert, Toranosuke Takagi, Noritaki Takahara, Konemitsu Takahashi, Patrick Tombe, Luigi Taramazzo, Gabriele Tacquini, Piero Toruffi, Dennis Taylor, Henry Taylor, John Taylor, Mike Taylor, Trevor Taylor, none of whom are related. Marshall Teague, Shorty Templeman, Max de Terra, André Testu, Mike Thackwell, Alfonso Tila. So it says United States, but he was actually born in Istanbul to Italian parents, lived in Italy. He entered 2 races, and I think the first one he actually entered as an Italian. The second one he entered as an American but never showed up. So strictly speaking, I'd say he'd be an Italian. Eric Thompson, Johnny Thompson, Leslie Thorne, Bud Tinglestad, Sam Tingle, Desmond Titterington, again aggressively English name, Johnny Tolan, Alejandro de Tomaso, Charles de Tornaco, Tony Trimmer, Maurice Trentignon, Maurice Trentignon, Wolfgang von Trips, Jan Trulli, Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Tuero, Guy Tunmer, Jack Turner, Tony Ullman, Bobby Unzer, Jerry Unzer Jr., Alberto Uria, Nino Vaccarella? I'm going to say Nino Vaccarella. Stoffel van Doorn, Bob Wieth, Jean-Eric Verne, Jos Verstappen, Max Verstappen, not Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, again not Sebastian Vettel, Sebastian Vettel, Gilles Villeneuve, Jacques Villeneuve, Jacques Villeneuve Sr., Luigi Villaresi. I at least know that in Spanish 2 L's make a Y, so this is Emilio de Viotta, Ottorino Volontario, Jo von Lanten. Again, I don't know if that's French or German. So that'd be Jo von Lanten. Ernie Defoe, Canadian but born and raised in the Netherlands, so Ernie Defoe. Nick de Vries, Bill Vukovic, Sid van der Weifer, Fred Wacker, David Walker, Peter Walker, Lee Wallard, Heine Walter, Roger Ward, Derek Warwick, John Watson, Spider Webb, okay, Mark Webber, Pascal Verlein, Volker Wiedler, Wayne Weiler, Carl Wendlinger, Peter Westbury, Chuck Wayant, Ken Wharton, Ted Whiteaway, Graham Whitehead, Peter Whitehead, Bill Whitehouse, Robin Widows, Epi Vietzers, Mike Wilds, Jonathan Williams, Roger Williamson, Dempsey Wilson. So this one, this is Desiree Wilson, is how you say it, not Desire, which I used to thought it was, or Desiree, it's Desiree Wilson. Justin Wilson, Vic Wilson, Joachim Winkelhock, Manfred Winkelhock, Marcus Winkelhock, Rainer Wissel, Roloff Wunderink, Alexander Wertz, Sakon Yamamoto, everyone's favourite F1 driver turned politician, Alex Jung, Alessandro Zanardi, Emilio Zapico, Emilio Zapico, I'll say. Okay, so with Joe, some people say Joe, Zhou, or Zhu, or Zhao. Some people incorrectly say Guan Yu Zhou. I looked this up, so the IPA for Mandarin, it approximately is Cho Guan Yu, is roughly how it would sound in China. But most people just say Zhou Guan Yu. Ricardo Zonta, Renzo Zorzi, Ricardo Zanino. And we're done. A lot of that, I think, went pretty badly. A lot of Formula One drivers were born in one country but then raised in another and then raced for that one, or their parents came from a different country to the one they were born in, so they end up having a non-native name, which made some of those quite confusing, and there were a lot of them, and I was like, it doesn't look at all like a name from that country, so I really don't know what to do there. But yeah, let me know what you think. Obviously, I feel more confident with the German and Dutch stuff than I do with the Italian and the French. But yeah, just let me know in the comments what you thought, and maybe grade me out of 800 and something if you have the time and the knowledge. But yeah, that was just a bit of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at Brook_F1. Also subscribe to my Patreon, join my Discord server, and check out the DRS Train podcast, and you'll find the links in the description. A huge shout out and thank you as ever to my Patreon subscribers, who are all listed here on the left. Do subscribe to my Patreon if you want early access to audio-only versions of each video, as well as a few videos that YouTube won't allow me to put up. And I'll see you all next time.